Hey guys, welcome back to the Off the Script podcast. Today we have yet another guest, this time veering more towards like the supplement industry and that side of things. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Joe Binley, the founder and owner of Project p.e.d and Professor Note. And yeah, that's part of the story. You guys probably don't know a lot of the history. Like, I was actually used to prep quite a lot of clients until about 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay.
So I got quite a lot of awareness in the UK. Obviously, I'm British, and I'm living out in the States right now in California. So.
Wow. So
that was one thing we wanted to get into. So it was like, a lot of people know you as, you know, Project p.e.d owner, Professor Nuts owner, out there, you know, shooting with Jay Cutler TV and things like that. But before we get into all that stuff, with like a lot of the people want to know, like, who are you, like, prior to running those two companies and moving out there? So where did it all start for Joe Binley?
Well, I started training when I was like 16 years old, probably like most people. You know, it was just a passion. I used to be overweight, and I grew up on a farm, so lifting things was part of something that I grew up with. So I always used to watch like The World's Strongest Man at Christmas. One of my friends got started. Well, one of my friends started hanging around with a bodybuilder who got him into weights, and he just grew incredibly quickly. So I was like, okay, I'll come and train with you. So I kind of got into like the lifting then when I was 16, and it just got deeper and deeper. But I didn't really focus too much on the training, because that just came to, training to me just came to lift as much as you can, as heavy as you can, as often as you can. Because that was just the mentality that I had.
Yeah.
So I really drilled down on the nutrition and really drilled down on the supplement side of things. So I was importing supplements and raw materials at the age of 18 from the USA and making my own formulas and giving them to my buddies, like when I was 18, 19. Finished my A-levels, took a year out and did all types of random jobs. And I grew up on a farm in the middle of nowhere, so I was quite aware that I had some inadequacies in my skill set. I wasn't very comfortable talking to certain people. I was quite shy. So I actually went and like did the most random jobs possible. Like, I did direct selling, which was literally dragging a bag full of merchandise into stores and into pubs trying to sell. Which was probably one of the best things I did, because I learned how to deal with all different types of people, how to deal with negatives and turn them into positives, and how to let things just kind of wash over me and not affect me too much. So from there, I went to university. I was training all the way through this time. Like, when I started training at 16, I've never stopped training. Like, there's not been any break. That was always my escape. So I went to university to get a degree, which honestly, it was something to fall back on. I already knew that I was going to be doing my own business. While I was in university, I was still doing the supplement thing. Like, I was doing diets for people. I was supplying supplements, buying on wholesale and selling supplements to make some extra money. And I came back to Hull, which is where I'm from originally, one Christmas, and I happened to be training at a new gym called p.e.d, and I went there for like 2 or 3 weeks, and the owner was just started talking to me. He's like, Matt, you resemble my son. It's like, it's uncanny. You speak just like my son. You look just like my son. He was like, I would love for you to meet him. And it's like, I didn't really think anything of this. So I was just like, okay, cool. Yeah, if I see him, I see him. Well, little did I know that his son, Mark Bowering, was Junior Mr. Universe when he was 21, and he happened to own Monster Supplements, which was the biggest online retailer in the UK at the time. Yeah. So I didn't even know this, but one day he was in the gym, and I was talking to his father, and he was in the back, and he overheard me talking. So he came through and started asking me some questions, and we just hit it off. Like, it was just like that. It was like, man, it's like, when you just got a connection with someone, it's crazy. So all the way through university, like last 2 years, I was actually consulting with him, because I had some links into China as part of my degree. Yeah. So he also owned or launched, while I was in university, p.e.d Nutrition. Now, I know you're all familiar with p.e.d.
Yeah.
So I actually did the tooling agreement. The arrangement was importing all of the tin lids. So if you know p.e.d's packaging, it's got the tin silver lids. No other company in the industry had tin lids before I did that with p.e.d. So I was like dealing with my Chinese counterparts, like the agents and the manufacturing facilities, and importing 40-foot container fulls of tin lids for p.e.d. whilst I was still in university. So I was out 2 weeks out from my finals, and Mark was like, "Do you want to come to China?" I was like, "What?" He's like, "Well, I want you to be involved in some fitness equipment. I want to launch a fitness equipment line." I was like, "Sure." So like 2 weeks before my final exams, I fly out to China, which was probably not the smartest thing that I did. But I went out there and then came back, and I actually flunked my first exam. I think I got something like 3 or 4%. Like I literally couldn't even read. I was so fatigued. But anyway, even with that, I came out with like I was thinking I was like 3 or 4% off a first degree honours degree, even with carrying that grade. So the day after I finished that, I went out with my friends and like to say goodbye to everybody, and packed up. I think I got in about 11 o'clock at night. I packed up my car, emptied my student house, drove all the way back to Hull. 9 a.m. the next morning, I was in the Monster Supplements office ready to start work. So that was how I got into the industry. And from there, I stayed about 11 months. And whilst I was in university, I'd already formulated 6 products. I'd already sourced all the raw materials from China. I'd done all the packaging, and Mark was just like, "Just come and work with me, get some industry experience, and I want you to manage Monster Supplements for me." So I did that, but after 10 or 11 months, he knew that my mind was set. I was going to do my own thing. So we parted ways on good terms. I flew out to the 2009 Olympia to meet my manufacturer, and the rest is history.
Wow. That's just letting that story like sink in. That is like, where did you get that urge to do that from such a young age? Because like when I started training, I'm only 20. When I started training when I was like 15, 16, I had a similar attitude of just wanted to just pound as much weight on the bar as possible, just like train every single day. But I looked at nutrition. I was interested in nutrition, that whole side of it. But I don't think it's that often that you get someone who's like, okay, what ingredients can I put together to elicit like a certain effect in a session? Like, where did that sort of come from?
I looked at the human body and the physiology quite a lot, and I looked at what was on the market, and I just saw nothing but gaps. Like, probably the biggest thing to me, like, in the success of like p.e.d has been, 1, the quality, but 2, I've always created a category, or within a category, I'll put a different spin on things.
Yeah.
You know, so if you think like a couple of our products, I'm going back like Ravenous and Matador. Ravenous is a digestive aid, so I looked at gut health. I was diagnosed celiac via blood tests and endoscopy in like 2008. So I started looking at gut health in 2008, and nobody in our industry was looking at gut health until maybe 3-4 years ago. So 8.5 years ago, nearly 9 years ago, I released Ravenous. You know, I was aware of what the digestive system, the strain it comes under. I also knew the side effects of malabsorption of nutrients. So I put that out, and we just created that niche within bodybuilding circles. And obviously I was prepping a lot of very good athletes at that time. You know, in the UK, you know, there's not that many pro athletes. There wasn't like 8-9 years ago. So, I mean, I'd done preps with Lee Powell, who's been on the Olympia stage. Jordan Peters was one of my closest friends. I would always experiment with Jordan. He was with the brand for a number of years. You know, we took, obviously, a bit later, we had Sasan with us. He was one of my closest friends from like before he was a pro. I always like would identify talent early and try and nurture that talent, and then educate them. You know, and then if they move on. You know, we'll go on good terms with all of them. But the coaching really helped carry the brand in the UK, and almost like it became to the point where p.e.d was secondary and it was just known as Joe's brand, and that kind of happened a little bit over here as well, which is quite strange.
Yeah, it's Project p.e.d is something that I only hear come up in conversation when your name's in the conversation. Like I remember last year, I ended up using your H2O Remove product.
Yeah.
I used that for my last show. And I remember like a week before, because I had some issues in terms of water retention going to my last show. I think to an extent I'd sort of burnt out a bit. I'd had some digestive problems over the course of like 2-3 weeks.
That's a telltale sign as well, you know, for anyone who's listening when you're coming into a prep. One of the biggest things that I see that holds people back, and when I try and fix people, like most of the problems comes down to too much stress on the digestive system and overtraining. Like 1 or 2 days rest, going back to maintenance calories to allow the body to relax and reset, will allow you to make 2, 3, 4 steps forward. But so many people are just scared to do that, especially when they get into the tail end of a prep, because it's like, you know, it's counterintuitive, but you know, that's where one of the tests is being a coach. Have you got the balls to do that? And a lot of people haven't. They see, okay, well, let's increase cardio and cut calories further, and the body's just going to fight you a lot more.
Yeah, that ended up being a bit of, I think, to an extent, what happened last year, where I was just sort of battling to drop water by just doing cardio, which in reality probably is counterintuitive. It should have been the other way around, right?
Well, it kind of has exacerbated the problem. Sorry.
Yeah.
Get that word out.
Yeah, for sure. Do you think that like we still have in bodybuilding like a sort of it's almost like a boxer's mentality, right? Where boxers are just like do or die, do as much as possible. You know, do you think that's
you know what? You're probably asking the wrong person. Like, I'm an asshole who's beat my body up to the point where I put myself in hospital multiple times last few years from autoimmune reactions, from working through it. But if you put me in a different setting, that's why I couldn't coach myself. Yeah. Because I'm an idiot. But put me in charge of somebody else, and I'm the biggest one to look for rest, and like everything you've got to think about is. You've got to work with the body and not against it. So as soon as the body starts to go defensive, then you need to kind of find ways for it to work with you again. Yeah. You know, it's always coaxing the body rather than forcing it.
Yeah, that makes so much more sense. I think, like last year, I want to hear your stance on this, because last year I was in a position where, in my prep, I was starting way too late with way too much to lose in reality. That's partly the reason why I burnt out. Do you think that there's a need for refeeds or anything like that? What is your like stance on that? Because obviously at the end of the day, you're trying to get in shape, but ruin your shape. So
well, the start point kind of dictates the way the prep's going to end up. But saying that I'm a big fan of being aggressive. I don't think that being aggressive is a bad thing. However, there's a time frame in which you can be aggressive before someone's body starts to say, you know what, I'm holding. So if you look at human physiology, it's like we hold body fat because it's stored energy. So if we like historically, we would go long periods without food. So we would hold on to that energy and save it for a rainy day. So if you stress the body too much and put it in that same scenario, our physiology is, okay, well, we're going to hold this because there's not enough energy coming in and we're expending a shit ton of energy. So whatever we do, we'll just keep hold of it. We're not letting this go. So you can get to a point where it starts to hoard, and then you have to go, okay, now we need to rest, and now we need to go back to, I wouldn't even call it about refeeds, because having a huge surplus is not going to be overly beneficial at that point. But going back to what your maintenance calories would be for 3, 4, 5 days,
that makes sense.
Back your energy expenditure, it's just kind of your body saying, okay, like one cheat meal isn't going to do that. One cheat meal is just going to like, do not much. It's going to fill your glycogen stores, and your body's still not going to completely stop stressing out. It needs to be reassured for 2, 3, 4, 5 days, however deep you've dug yourself into.
Yeah. Can you still hear me? I think Jermaine's gone. I'm not
sure. Sorry, Joe.
Yeah,
mine cut out there for a second.
I didn't know if it was you that dropped off or whether it was me.
Yeah, no, that was me. You were fine. Sorry, can you just repeat that last bit again?
Oh yeah,
Sorry.
I heard it, but you didn't. So
Yeah.
See, when you're looking at like a prep scenario, you've got to look in waves and look. It's so individual. So people look. I did like no carbs for 5 years. Was I doing that for bodybuilding purposes? No, I was experimenting and I wanted to kind of reset my clock. And honestly, mental cognition and convenience while I was traveling, building the business was my primary concern.
Yeah.
Do I do low carb phases? 100%, yeah. Because I mean, if you were coming to me and you'd had a sloppy off season, you're overweight, you're kind of insulin resistant, you know, you've been eating a lot of processed foods, then the first thing I'm probably going to do is put you on a low carbohydrate diet for 2 to 3 weeks to reset insulin sensitivity and get you in to like an even set point, and then start zigzagging calories and cycling through macronutrients.
Yeah.
You know, so there's always phases to every diet. You know, I remember I prepped one guy in Ireland, Jim Benskin, and we started him off on 50 grams of carbs for the first 6 weeks. Going into the show, the last 4 weeks, he was on 600 grams of carbs.
Oh, yeah, okay.
You know, so it's once you program metabolism and got it firing, then you can feed it, and that's when you can have the fun really starts to happen. But many people don't get to that point because they beat metabolism into the ground, and then you have to start looking at increasing cardio. And unfortunately, for a lot of people, coaches just increase hormone use. T3 will go up, you know.
Yeah.
Other hormones will go up, and
yeah.
And especially when that happens with females, unfortunately, they take a hell of a lot of recovery after that. You know, it might take them a full year off stage to recover the hormones and get them back in a good spot.
Yeah. Wow. I feel like I've had a lot of things that I thought were correct sort of flipped in my head now. Do you call?
Hey, look,
sorry,
there's so many different ways of doing things. Like,
yeah,
you know,
of course. Do you think that?
I just look at which is the best way to kind of maintain health and leave you in a good position once you've finished the prep, and not your blood work not to be too like hindered, you know.
Yeah. So you talked about like obviously starting off super aggressive and having like, let's say, giving someone 50 grams of carbs versus hundreds like leading into the show. Do you have like an emphasis then? Like obviously, partly why I struggled last year was definitely down to my immune system crashing as well. Do you sort of like encourage and push micronutrients towards the end of prep, or do you do? Is that something?
I push micronutrients all the way through, and it's a really, really good that you're aware of that. And I just want to put a caveat on that. Me being aggressive at the start of a diet was only applicable to your state because you started from being well behind.
Yeah.
So my typical approach, it depends. Like if someone comes and they've been training their ass off and they've built the metabolism up and they're on point, the glucose, everything, all the health parameters are in check, then we'll just coast in, and we might do a small cut and then just drift in. You know, we might reduce the training volume, reduce the carbohydrates, and do a strength cycle training, and then build carbs and build volume as the metabolism starts responding. You know, so training goes hand in hand with the nutrition. You know, so if you're on if I put someone on a low carb phase, they are doing 15 to 20 reps for 20 sets. You know, in a workout, they might drop to the 5 to 8 rep ranges and stay there, but we get increasingly strong week on week until it gets to the point where, okay, now we're going to flip to more glycolytic work. You need more carbohydrates. You know.
So, what is your sort of stance on like training and programming? Because obviously, there's the whole low volume versus high volume. Are you a mix of both? Because it sounds like you do metabolic and CNS dominant. Like.
Yeah, you have to. I believe you have to. Like, so if I'm in a prep scenario, whoever I used to work with, because I don't really coach anymore, it's generally rescuing people's health markers. They'll send me blood work, or occasionally a rescue prep where someone's kind of shit the bed and they're 2-3 weeks out and they just need rescuing. But I would always like to nominate like 3 lifts, so like 3 of their favorite lifts compounds. So it'd be like an upper body, a lower body, and like maybe a push or a pull, whatever it is. And those will be my strength markers in prep. So it might be, okay, we're going to do 3 sets of 5, 3 sets of 6. I don't care if you rest 3, 4, 5 minutes between those sets. I want to keep your strength wherever it is all the way through prep. Because that's going to keep you, tell me where your CNS is at, and it's going to hold some density. And then we can increase the pace and increase the metabolic stress and increase the volume as needed. I believe that workouts need heavy, and I think you need to have time under tension. You need to have explosive movements as well. So.
Awesome.
Good
I
stuff.
love the tangents we end up going on in this program. It's fantastic because there's so many avenues from one question that it goes to.
Yeah.
But I was still waiting to get a word in edgeways about digestion.
Well, this is kind of why I said, like, guys, have you got any questions? Because I did a podcast last week and it was more business orientated, you know. So I was talking about the business side, whereas like I could talk about nutrition until the cows come home, you know. So you mentioned micronutrients there. Like the deeper you get into a diet, especially if someone's not enhanced, you've got to really take care of like thyroid. So you're looking at have they got adequate iodine, adequate selenium in there? You know, are they getting the right micronutrients to support cellular function, vitamin C, vitamin D? Are they getting the right type of fatty acids in there, at least the minimum? You know, so when I used to do like keto diets with people, I would actually have days where we'll try and reset and mitigate any inflammation. My guys didn't know that I actually balanced the omega-3 to 6 ratio to a 1-to-1. So if they wanted to switch foods out, I'd be like, no, you kind of need to stick to them for these couple of days because we're getting your inflammation down. You'll see you'll drop 2 or 3 pounds of water. Yeah. And they would be reset and they'd be like, you don't really need to know how that works. Yeah. I know. But just like we'll roll with it and then we'll get back to a different phase of the diet.
That's so intricate. That's such an intricate detail in a coach.
It's important, though.
Yeah, they're so important.
When I got diagnosed with ulcerative colitis back in April, obviously one thing I started looking a lot more into was because I went anemic due to blood loss from it. And yeah, it was pretty bad. It's like obviously, your normal levels
just a bit.
Supposed to be at 9. What's that?
Yeah, just a bit. You're massively downplaying that, though.
Supposed to be at level 9, right? I was down at 2. They said if I hadn't have gone in, a couple more days, I would have been, 6 feet under. But so after that, I've sort of looked at digestion and inflammation a lot more. And one thing I've been doing, and I've noticed a big difference with, is mixing protein sources throughout meals.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if that is something you've done with clients or done with yourself.
A hell of a lot. So my favorite always used to be chicken and salmon. I would mix those two consistently, and then you'd look at like the rate of digestion, something that is massive for me. So I can make a diet a lot easier for someone, or I can make it a lot harder for someone. So it's why are we using the same food sources all the time? You want a diverse gut microbiome for one reason, so we want to be switching food sources. You're going to develop intolerances over time. And for people who doubt that, I'll just say, go and ask any bodybuilder who's trained and ate like a bodybuilder for 10 years and ask them if they've got digestive issues. Most of them have got digestive issues, because they're not paying attention to rotation of foods and they're not paying attention to the gut health. And we're not designed to eat 6, 7, 8 times a day. As we get older, we produce less enzymes and our stomach acid gets weakened significantly. So I pay attention to what's going on around meal times, but the rate of digestion for sure. So that's where like a lot of the stuff with the fats will come in. So if I want to speed up like the rate of digestion, get extra calories in, we can use something like an MCT oil, which is pretty much really doesn't affect digestion. You're getting calories in, it's going to be used instantly as an energy source as opposed to bumping carbohydrates when someone's maybe at the carbohydrate tolerance.
Yeah.
If you want to slow that down, attach a fiber and a fat to a meal. That's going to maintain blood glucose levels and slow down the digestion. So something that might hold them over for 3 or 4 hours as opposed to something like a chicken and rice meal, which would generally hold them over for like an hour and a half, and you're looking to chew your arm off. So when you start looking at the speed and the food's digested and also the insulin, the blood glucose response to those meals, you can kind of really make a diet pretty bearable for people.
Taste wise, one of mine is mixing like obviously like steak and eggs, chicken and prawns. They're probably my 2 favorite ones.
Oh, your girlfriend loves you.
And also if you didn't want to do that and you're suffering from digestive issues and you're normally doing like maybe look, I've been in America, so I'm speaking in like ounces now, but you normally do like 200 grams of protein, like 200 grams weight of meat. Oh, that's 7 ounces here. you could cut that down to like 100 grams, 125 grams, and then supplement some essential amino acids with that. And you're still going to get circulating amino acids, you're going to get whole proteins, and you get adequate levels of leucine and all the essential amino acids. And that'll ease the digestive tract, and you cannot increase your carbohydrate or dietary fat to make up calorie requirements. Like, I find that as a really good tool for people who are struggling, because protein obviously is generally slow digesting and it's very acidic.
Yeah. Do you have any like supplementation that you'd implement to reduce the high acidity as a result?
This is the perfect time to plug Project AD and the new health.
Yeah. So is there like a way for, like, do you have some products or anything in the works or in mind that can help aid that?
Honestly, when it comes to like the digestion, keeping the system healthy, the two that we made were the ones I mentioned before for going with your diet, and it's Ravenous and Matador. You know, they're going to help with the digestion, and they're going to help direct glucose into the cell. And I want to touch on Matador briefly, because that is nearly 9 years old, and we've had, God knows, hundreds of diabetics use that product, type 1 and type 2. And the strange thing about AD is, like, we had like some of the top Olympians and like Olympia champions use our products 6, 7, 8 years ago, and all the way through to the current day. Like, it was strange. Like, we got to the top, like out the top guys were using our products before it kind of got known. You know, so Matador is one that I would always, like, I'd be overnighting bottles of Matador to pros, hotels to help them with the carb up, because it was just so efficient. You know, and that's one product that I'm really proud of, because it makes a massive difference to health as well as obviously body composition. You know, the sooner you can clear blood glucose, then the less exposure to insulin you've got, and the more efficient the body is, and the lower the risk of inflammation. If you become insulin resistant and you've got high circulating blood glucose, you're going to secrete more insulin, you're going to be exposed to more inflammation. If you compound that meal on meal 5 to 6 times per day, week on week, it's going to cut your off season short. It's going to impair the rate in which you can grow.
100%. That's I noticed as well as I got, because it sort of all happened suddenly. Like, I had issues for about 18 months, and it sort of went away. I say went away, it didn't. I just fucking ignored it, and then it all kind of bombarded me in about a month, and that's when, you know, shit really hit the fan, so to speak. So yeah, one of the questions touching on blood glucose from Matt Tofton. He wants to know, would there be any reason I could wake up in the middle of the night with a blood glucose of 4.5 to 5, then go back to sleep, not consume anything, and wake up a few hours later with high 5s and low 6s?
Interesting.
Yes, there's a couple of reasons.
Okay.
So there's something called the dawn phenomenon, which is, it's also linked to your circadian rhythm. So, and that's a natural response, which is a release of hormones. So cortisol being the primary one, which is going to result in an increase in blood glucose, where it's going to tell the body you're preparing to wake up, you need some energy to get up, and you're preparing for energy expenditure, so your liver will dump some glucose into the bloodstream. So that's quite a natural occurring thing. If it gets really elevated and really high, then you can kind of help mediate that. And I would look at adding things to your regimen which are going to lower potential stress responses, like ashwagandha, taking at least 600 milligrams of that with a PM meal the night prior. And you can take an AM serving of ashwagandha as well, which we do carry with AD. That can make a big difference to like the amplified stress responses that you may be incurring. I don't know, Matt's situation, maybe he's exposed to higher levels of stress at the moment. I don't know, but that's one reason, and it's natural. If you're really getting concerned, and I don't know what position he's at, so I can need more information, but if he's getting up and wanting to do morning cardio and thinks, well, my glucose is elevated, this is something like a type 1 diabetic bodybuilder will experience, whereby which they'll get up and they'll have to take a little bit of insulin before they can do morning cardio to get the blood glucose back under control. You know, you also get the same cortisol response when you're under a lot of physical stress. So, and I'll know this from doing ketogenic diets extensively. So when I train, I would go into the training with high blood level ketones, like 3.5 millimolars. And immediately after finishing training, my blood glucose would be elevated and my ketones would be almost non-existent. One, because I burned through the circulating ketones, and two, glucose would have been released into my bloodstream, so that would switch off my ability to start creating more ketones. So you get a cortisol response to physical stress, but also it's like mental stress. So that's one reason why he could have elevated blood glucose. Metformin's really good at keeping a lid on hepatic glucose release, you know, so that might be something he cares to look at. But I've had people use Matador upon waking, and then within 20-30 minutes, the blood glucose is back into normal range if they want to go and do cardio, you know. So it does contain berberine, which is an AMPK activate. Once you've activated AMPK, you know, you can start liberating fat stores more readily. So that's one reason. Another reason could be down to nutrition. This is probably where I would start. Like, what's his diet like, and specifically what's he eating in the meals prior to bedtime? Because he could be just having a dip in blood glucose during the night, and then obviously your body detects that and then releases some glucose as a reaction to having a drop in blood glucose during the night. So if he's eating something like, when we touched on digestion, so I don't know, like something like egg whites and some prawns or something like that, which is all protein, or some carbohydrates in his meal prior, that's going to digest pretty quickly and could potentiate a lack of energy during the night or sustained release. So his liver's going to dump some glucose to mediate for that. You know, so ways of troubleshooting that would be to attach a fat to his last meal or his diet. In one of the meals that I would always give people would be something like turkey breast and broccoli, because broccoli is great at stabilizing blood glucose level. It's got a fiber attached to it and it's very low calorie. So in a dieting scenario, those two would work very well.
There's your answer, Matt. Yeah,
he's I think he is prepping for one of the British shows. I think it's about 8 or 10 weeks out or something like that.
Yeah, which I mean, we could touch. It could be a key. It could also be a little bit of insulin resistance, but that's not often the case with athletes unless you're using high amounts of exogenous growth hormone, and that's going to be a case of that would kind of show itself in postprandial blood glucose readings as well. So if you start taking blood glucose during the day, and you notice it's a little bit elevated throughout the day, then it's the first signs of insulin resistance. So that might be an indicator you need to back off the growth hormone dosage a little bit and lower your carbs for 4 or 5 days and lower your calories for 4 to 5 days. And that'll generally hit the reset, and then you can kind of build back up again. Just while I'm on the subject of growth hormone, if anyone out there uses MK677, that really increases insulin resistance a lot quicker than growth hormone. That's something I see a lot with a lot of people. So if you are using that, definitely get yourself a glucometer and keep an eye on your glucose levels, because it does, after about 3-4 weeks, it really does start to impact them.
Okay. Awesome. I had a few more questions on blood glucose, but we've pretty much covered a lot of it. Again, we had a question, which product from the AD range are you most proud of? You've covered that.
Yeah.
We had a fun one. So that was, if you could go back in time to Golds and train, would you go back to the 70s or the 90s?
That's a good question. I would go back. I'd go back to the 70s. You know, I've actually been fortunate to spend a week in training with Tom Platz, which was pretty cool.
Oh, wow.
Well, actually, I've already done that, so maybe back to the 90s. So that's a really good question. No, I'll stick with my original answer. You've got to go back to Arnold's era. You know, it's just like that's the romance. That's where all the sport was set. It's kind of sad now going back. Obviously, Golds is closed at the moment, but I think it's lost that kind of vibe, and there's no real bodybuilders here anymore. You know, everyone's kind of moving away, and I think that's going to be symptomatic of what happens for California in general. A lot of people are moving away due to all the legislation that's coming, not just with COVID. It's just been an excuse for them to action a lot more things which are taking people's rights away. So
that's one nice thing about the UK. The bodybuilding scene is very tight knit still, and you got a lot of good fucking athletes training together in one facility.
Yeah.
It's like Me and Jermaine, when he's in Birmingham, when he's not in Sheffield, he'll train at Ultimate Fitness with like where I train as well. So you've got like British champion, you know, you got Randy, who's PCA World like pro. You got Dean Lashak in there, Simon, guys like that. So they're all fucking still busting ass. And then when Jermaine goes up north again, he's at Ultraflex, so he's with Cuba, Jamie, all those guys.
All the trained by JP crew, all that. I think I'm the same. I think I'd stick with the 70s because we would talk about this just before me and Joe, and I was just thinking the 70s. Yeah, it's got like just like this level of nostalgia, but in the way like it's something that you haven't actually experienced yourself, but you still feel like a level of nostalgia like associated with that, and that's something I'd love to actually experience first. And also, I feel like the 90s, a lot of them were just partying all the time. I feel like that was a thing in the 90s. You hear stories about all these bodybuilders just going to clubs and getting really drunk. So I'd rather skip that. I'd rather just I don't know, sunbathe on Muscle Beach.
Yeah, you're an anomaly. Most people would want to go and party.
Yeah.
I'd rather see Dory in the flesh, like on stage.
Oh, I can tell you some stories about Dorian as well, mate. Some things Rad's told me. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
I think he'd rather that not get on the air, especially now he's with Gal and things like that. So we'll just keep that way.
Well, it's called off script for a reason.
Oh, I know, 100%.
Yeah. I've got a question that I've thought about because I'm currently studying strength conditioning and sports nutrition as a degree. And one of the things I've been interested in is there a benefit to using both a fructose-based carbohydrate and also a more complex carbohydrate going into a session? Because obviously you have the two different transporters. So I was wondering, is that almost of a hack, like a carbohydrate?
Setting him off again.
Okay, like I'm just laughing because I've done like 3 or 4 posts against fructose.
Okay, interesting.
So honestly, no. I mean, I don't see why you would really be wanting to like put fructose into the system. Yeah, you've got fructose transporters, but that's going to primarily go to liver glycogen. I mean, the main concern is to go to muscle glycogen, so we want glucose. Like, I'm not a big fan of any processed carbohydrates in general because you can look at blood glucose readings. I think I actually spoke about this on JTV, like some of the studies whereby which people consumed whole apples, apple sauce, or apple juice. Okay. And measuring blood glucose response to those 3 things really wasn't that much different. It was almost identical. They also controlled the amount of time that it took to consume them. So if it took me 5 minutes to eat an apple, I'd have to drink the apple juice over 5 minutes. But what there was a massive difference in was the amount of insulin secreted.
Okay.
You know, so it's the release of GIP, GLP, you know. So that's also with fructose, it acts a little differently. So when you're putting glucose into a cell, it will only uptake so much and then it will kind of put a halt on that because it has to spend a little energy before it can create that energy and turn it into ATP.
Right. Okay.
Whereas with fructose, it pretty much just says, okay, come on.
Yeah.
You know, so it will speed up the speed. It will speed up the rate in which we become insulin resistant. And excess fructose is going to start and deliver any excess. You're going to start to gain visceral fat more readily as well. So there's actually studies out there that show increased visceral fat when it's controlled the amount of fructose versus glucose. So in every single scenario, I would always prioritize glucose-based or starch-based carbohydrates.
So stick with the cyclic dextrin. No mango or apples pre-workout.
I'm just not a huge fan of it, and it's like some people may disagree, but go and look at the science, go and look at the research. I'm not saying like demonize fructose 100%, but if you're going to have fructose in your diet, just do it from whole foods so the natural carbohydrate structure is intact and the fructose release is mediated as it should be and not sped up. It's not something you want to
okay.
the process of, you know.
Okay, that makes sense to me. Okay, question answered. That was a great answer. Thank you.
I had one question. Obviously, the poll's gone now, but from what I can remember, it was the impact and importance of collagen for a performance-based athlete, and do you have an opinion on if it could be useful or not?
I'm not hugely I'm not a huge fan of collagen. I think it's been overplayed and overmarketed somewhat.
Yeah.
If you're getting adequate amino acids, you can create collagen. Glycine's being one of them, and glycine is actually hugely beneficial, and I don't think many people use it. So you could supplement with 5 to 10 grams of glycine. If your protein intake is like our intake is, which is going to be in excess of 200 grams of protein a day, you're going to get all of your amino acids. I think the collagen thing, this is where a lot of confusion comes in, where things will become trendy in different populations, and I know this because I'm part of them. Like, I've been part of the keto community, the carnivore community. I've experimented with every type of diet, and you'll see things originate popularity in there, and they'll start to cross over into other avenues, and it's like it gets completely taken out of context. You know, it's like I've done keto extensively and I've done carnivore extensively, and then you get people asking me, it's like for bodybuilding, it's like, oh, should I do this? Should I do this? I'm like, if you're looking to build the best physique possible and increase the rate of you accrue muscle tissue, then probably not. But you've got to put things into context. I wasn't doing it for that reason. So you'll see things cross over from subpopulation to subpopulation, and it's just poor application or not looking at the context in which it's used and trying to apply it into something else. You know, I see it happen a lot. You know, you'll come across it because you're in academia. You'll see a study in one setting, and then when you try and apply it to another setting, it's completely freaking irrelevant.
Yeah.
You know,
it needs to be contextualized, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It does. Everything needs to be contextualized, and the thing is about what we do in this industry is that there's not really much there to back it up study-wise, because
it tends to be at the front, like, of research, doesn't it? It tends to be like, oh, this new thing comes out, like SARMs, like, for example, were like, have become like this huge, I wouldn't say fad, but it felt that way just because of how pushed it was, thing, and like a lot of people.
Well, that was a little bit of a desperation from the industry as well, looking for something that's not banned that they could sell, because back in the day they would have pro-hormones.
Yeah.
Pro-hormones are all banned, so what's next? They've got to find the next replacement. You know, so
that makes sense.
When there's no other options, people who are sheerly money-driven are going to find something to market.
Yeah. Even if it's killing people.
Honestly, man, I'm in this industry, and I've been exposed to far too much, and that's why I'm really staunch on things, the way that I do things. And some things may take a little bit longer, and probably the most expensive thing that I've had, like the most expensive thing in my life, has been having a code of ethics. Because in this industry, there's just so much temptation. I see so many other companies cutting corners that it's just like, okay, you've made yourself an extra $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 here, but you've sold out, and eventually you're going to get found out. You know, everyone's so very short-sighted.
Yeah.
I relate business very much to the way that I look at bodybuilding. It's like, if you try and push your physique and grow too quickly, you're going to run into problems.
Yeah.
You know, if you're not aggressive enough with your body, then people are going to overtake you. You know, so it's getting a fine balance, like it is with business, the rate in which you grow, and like by the means by which you grow. You know, if you throw every anabolic, insulin, and growth hormone at your body at your age, 20, where do you go from there?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's the industry is like, at the moment, I feel like there's a divide that's growing, where you have a lot of people who are pushing really hard for ethics, and ethics have sort of become the cool thing to do. Do you think that we're going to get to a point where ethical just becomes unethical? Because I feel like there's some companies out there who are just like, oh yeah, we're on it. Like,
it depends though, because obviously, I don't want to say me, Jermaine, and yourself, you know, we're actual fans of the sport.
Yeah. So
we respect the sport as a sport. We respect it enough to provide or do good quality things. Whereas a lot of the time you've got a businessman who sees a market, and he can expose that market. He can exploit that market for just pure monetary gain. Whereas someone like yourself, who's been in the sport for like themselves prior to, you know, having business aspirations when it comes to opening and creating a supplement company and actual, it's like you were at the pro show the other week, you know, you don't see that from a lot of supplement company owners, you know.
Yeah, but you got to realize, like, most of these guys there are my friends. You know, you see, like, I do a podcast with Justin and Dominic. Like, these are just my guys. Like, they're my people. So I'm gonna be there, and I'm gonna support people. Like Ian. Like Ian was competing. Like Ian Valier has nothing to do with AD, but Ian Valier is one hell of a awesome person. I was there to support Ian. You know, it's not just supplements. I don't want people to think, oh yeah, this is talking about supplements. It happens everywhere, guys. Look at coaching. How many coaches have like transformations? It's like, great, you've given this guy a 10-week transformation, or this girl with a great transformation. You've drugged them up, you've crashed the hormones, and absolutely fucked, and they've rebounded and put on 30 pounds.
Yeah, what they look like 10 weeks after. Yeah.
It's like, how. The biggest thing was, if I'm going to give anyone a tip if they're looking to hire a coach, look at a coach's track record, but look how long they keep a client. Yeah. If they're turning over clients and continually turning over clients, it tells you that the retention rate's really bad. It's like if you're buying a product from a supplement company or any company in general, you're just buying a product and you don't buy that product again, it speaks volumes about your experience as a consumer. Yeah. You know, so it's just kind of being logical about everything.
We've just some knowledge bombs so far. Do we have any more questions, Joe?
I'm trying to think, because I screenshotted it when there was like an hour left, and I know some more came in after that. Trying to think.
It's been nice talking to people who understand what I actually say. I mean, in the USA, people ask like, "What the hell are you trying to say?" A lot of them just nod and agree, and I could say anything because they don't understand a word I'm saying.
Yeah. That is definitely one of the reasons we wanted you on. Was just like, typically with this show, we don't tend to we have a lot of knowledgeable people on, but we don't talk knowledgeable stuff. You know, this is definitely a bit of a departure in a way for us to some of the people who watch this who are wanting that sort of content that we just don't put out. So it'll be interesting to see I'm sure people will love this as is. So yeah.
100%. Excuse me.
Yeah.
What was I wanted to ask, like, what like prompted the move out to the States for yourself?
That's a great question. Yeah.
On being brutally honest, guys, this has been from childhood. I was going to end up here. Like I got laughed at a hell of a lot, you know. And I've done a lot of this journey alone, and it's been very lonely. And if you ask me, would I do it again? I'd probably have to think twice. But I started manufacturing AD. I told you I launched in 2009. Yeah. I've always manufactured in America. In my eyes, it's always been an American brand. The fact that I was in the UK and I had a customer base and a following meant I could easily build a base for AD in the UK. But the end goal was always to come to the USA and crack the USA market. That was a big challenge for me because no one from the UK had really done it. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go out there and prove that I'm not a competitive, like I'm not a professional bodybuilder like Dorian who launched a supplement line. I want to prove that a guy can come out to the States and build a business and build a brand. And that was something that from day one I said I was going to do. I actually got AD listed on bodybuilding.com. The purchase order came through for that on Christmas Eve 2009, I believe it was. Wow. Yeah. And that was just almost like put my stamp on things, just to say, okay, these are my intentions. It's listed on bodybuilding.com, and everyone looked at bodybuilding.com then, so it made my job of selling to other people in the UK really easy, because they would go, oh, I've not heard of this brand. I would just simply say, there's the link to bodybuilding.com, and they would buy immediately. Yeah. You know, so it took me a little while to get out here full time. The biggest risk I took was launching business out here in 2016. It could have bankrupted me, but I've always been a risk taker, a calculated risk taker, and I've always backed myself. So, you know, if you want to do something, you're going to have to take some risks, and you're going to have to have confidence in yourself.
This is something that I'm sort of looking at a bit more now as well, because I definitely, I'd say for the past maybe 3 years, I've also somewhat had the interest to go there, to move to the US. It's definitely been something that's played on my mind. But my sort of transition now will be through online coaching. What are your thoughts on the sort of climate at the moment in the States with coaching and stuff like that?
Look, the fitness industry is always growing. I mean, obviously with COVID, it's got a little bit more difficult because people aren't in the gyms as frequently, but all that's going to come back.
Yeah.
You know, if you do a good job as a coach, and I would put out just transformations and show that you're getting results and put out information, then people are going to be drawn to you.
Yeah.
You know, there's not going to be, it's not going to be an industry or a part of the industry that's going to dwindle because more people are becoming more aware. If anything, COVID has probably made people more health conscious. And if you look at the mechanisms of actions of COVID and the people who are getting most sick with it or having the most effects once they've contracted COVID, it's the people with metabolic syndrome. So that's going to force people to take a look at like what is going on internally with their diet, what's going on with their organs. But like a lot is mediated by blood glucose response, insulin resistance. You'll see a lot of the cases have complications that are pre-diabetic, type 1, type 2 diabetic, you know. So
it's really, it's been somewhat frustrating here, I think, looking at what the government has prioritized in terms of reopening and such.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? Because it does just seem very clearly, I think this is, to the general person, it feels like a bit of a money grab and wealth over health.
It's moronic.
Yeah.
There's no other way of putting it. I mean, the way that they've gone about things, if you just look at the populations that are most healthy, the ones that are, as I said, metabolically healthy, they're going to recover. And you look at what's going on with a cellular level with COVID and its ability to attach to receptors because of the structure of COVID. It's got like the spikes going out, which will attach to a receptor. And that's when it attaches to that receptor, which is easier to do in insulin-resistant people, that's when you're going to have like the coagulation, why people are getting the blood clots. Yeah. So you keep like the blood healthy. It's not too what's the word I'm looking for? It's not too it's not viscous. Yeah, it's not too highly viscous. And you have a diet high antioxidants. I mean, they're probably the best prevention methods. I mean, we produced a product called Immune Plus, and that's a really ridiculously good product. Like on the natural front, it's like, if you look at what's in there, it's phenomenal because it's got transporters to help get zinc and other materials across the cell membrane into the organelles, which is where the real problem is. You know, so I mean, God, thinking back to what we've got in there, we've got a form of thymoquinine in there, which helps transport, and obviously quercetin. You know, it's a really complex formula with some great studies behind it, but everyone released an immune formula that kind of got lost in the shuffle. Like, if you actually looked at the intricacies of this product, you would appreciate it, you know? Yeah. But it's like, no, we'll release some vitamin C and some elderberry and call it the solution. You're not doing anything.
So that's for everyone watching and listening. Go check that out. Go have a look at that product. Let's blow that one up a bit.
Not to finish the podcast on a downer. We always do ask the guests. Yeah, let's obviously, this is going to be different. Yeah, this is going to be different now because you're very. It's like we have a lot of like the athlete's point of view because you have a lot of competitors come on and things like that. So coming from someone who's got a lot of experience in coaching and obviously within the supplement industry, we always ask if you're on death row and you're about to go to the chair, if you could have a 3-course meal, what would it be and why? So.
Salmon and Professor Nuts every single time. That's something that everyone laughs at, and it's like I keep it there as a joke. But I've always done salmon and peanut butter, and obviously since I got Professor Nuts, I put that everywhere. But yeah, everyone needs to go and try salmon and peanut butter, and let me know what you think. You know.
Congrats on the published. Wow.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a long endeavor, and people like. I got so much shit talk, and a lot of people abandoned ship when I released Professor Nuts because they're like, we don't believe this works. I'm like, okay, you can, and this is what I'm talking about, context. So we talked about context. It's really important here as to why I got the study done. There's a lot of studies, and we've got them all published on our website regarding cyclodextrins, in particular alpha cyclodextrins and its ability to bind to fat and stop absorption of fats. Now, that's all well and good. Now, firstly, we don't just use alpha cyclodextrin. We use cyclodextrins, and how we manipulate that is our intellectual property. That's our right. You don't see Coca-Cola giving the formula away. Like, that took us a long time to work on and perfect. But why is that so important? Well, look at the context of the studies. Like, a lot of them are done in test tubes. Now, you put those into the human body. Do they stand up to stomach acid? Do they stand up to heat? I already know the answer. That's why we have intellectual property and why we did the study. So that peanut butter is on finished. That study is on our finished product peanut butter, comparing it to a normal peanut butter and fat gain. I mean, that was why it was so important to me. It was a huge investment and a huge endeavor. Like, that product has been 3.5 years from like development to getting the study done, you know. So I expect it to be, well, it is revolutionary, and I think it'll raise awareness and set a standard in the food industry for the coming like 2, 3, 4 years, and that's going to be a monster.
Do you think that that's going to expand beyond just that? Do you think you'll pump out other products in the similar vein? Or?
I can tell you right now, and it's no secret, like, I've got 18 SKUs within the Professor Nuts brand that are going to be released in the next 2 years.
Right. Wow.
So yeah, I'm always 3 to 5 years ahead. Like, my product releases for that brand are already up to like 2023. So yeah, always ahead of the curve.
So far ahead of the curve. Yeah. Wow. Well, that's kind of a high to end it on then, isn't it?
Yeah. You still didn't answer. Just salmon and peanut butter all day long.
Yeah, just salmon and peanut butter. What an answer that is.
Skin on or skin on?
I want tagging in everybody's salmon and peanut butter pictures on Instagram, and I will share them.
The key question there is skin on or skin off?
Skin on. The skin is the best bit.
Yes.
If anyone, in fact, if anyone doesn't eat the skin, then I never want to communicate with you. You're not my people.
Surely they're missing out on a lot, like health-wise.
Of course.
Yeah, sure. Of course. Yeah.
That's where all the health and nutrition is. It's all in the skin, right?
Always.
Skin's great on everything.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Shall we end it there, guys?
I'm very happy to. I've really enjoyed this. And once again, thank you for your time, Joe.
Yeah.
No, as I said, pleasure to be on, guys. And anytime if you get a bunch of questions on the follow-up to this.
Yeah, for sure. Do you want to just plug yourself real quick? Not that you need any introduction on these, like, you know, what you're affiliated with, but just throw them out there.
If anyone's got any questions, just hit me up on Instagram. You know, that's at JoeB_AD. You know,
okay, perfect.
I'm pretty responsive on there if I'm not like completely stressed out.
Yeah. All right, guys, thank you so much. Thanks again, Joe, for coming on. And to the listeners and viewers, we'll see you again next time.
Thanks, guys.